The Orquesta Sinfónica de Estado de Sao Paulo, or CESPI, finally, after teasing that we would have somebody from the orchestra, the day came. And if by the way, if I make any mistakes, it's all my fault because my son and technical engineer is not joining me today. But joining me today, not from Sao Paulo, but from Porto Alegre, I have to say that it is my great honor to welcome Maestro Emmanuele Baldini. Hello, Emmanuele. Welcome.
The invitation.
Thank you again. It's really an honor to have you for so many reasons. First, because you've been with the Orchestra of Sao Paulo for so many years. I want to start 16 years. So yes. I just want to ask you, before we start, how are you? How's everybody in the orchestra? I know that we had the passing of Naomi Munakata, who
yes.
Was the director of the choir. I never had the honor of meeting her, but I attended many performances with her conducting. So we feel so bad. She's, because of COVID-19, is what happened. So how are you? How's your family? How's the OSESPI family doing?
Thank you very much. I'm very well with the situation. Of course, it's a terrible situation, but my family in Italy, it's okay. In Italy, they are already better now. A little bit better. Here in Brazil, we are well, safe, at least. In the orchestra, of course, we had tough moments because Naomi and other musicians too, and other chorus master, not from OSESPI, but Brazilian, also died for COVID-19. And in Brazil, in general, it's a very complicated situation, and it's not going better, actually. So it seems that we are late in comparison with Europe, with some countries in Europe. But at least we are safe. I am working a lot. Even in the quarantine, I am working a lot, making meetings, trying to establish some plan to be back in a way.
I see. Emmanuele, one of the most interesting questions is we ignorant people like me in the music industry, we kind of we kind of understand what the conductor does, but could you tell me exactly what does the concertmaster do? Because I see you, like, for me, I attend the orchestra, we sit down, everybody tells me to be quiet, then we all applaud and the orchestra comes in, which in Brazil is very unique. I think OSESPI is one of those unique orchestras that the orchestra comes in like in Europe. Everybody's quiet and the orchestra comes in and they're acknowledged for that. Then we're all quiet, then you come in and we applaud, and then we're quiet again, and then the conductor comes in and then we applaud. What is exactly the role of the concertmaster?
Many roles actually, many. I try to be very short in this answer, but could be very long, because first of all, the job of the concertmeister starts much before then the first rehearsal starts. We receive the material, we receive the scores, we need to check all the bowings, see if they work, maybe change something, or in some cases we don't have bowings because we have some new composition, so you have to put bowings, so you have to learn the piece, to understand what the piece is about. So you start to learn the piece, to be in touch with the music, with the repertoire, much before than the other musicians. Then you start to rehearse, and this is maybe the most difficult part of the job. Even more difficult than the concert itself, because you need very quickly to understand the music ideas of the conductor. Every conductor has a different approach to Mozart, to Beethoven, to that particular piece, and you have to very quickly understand which kind of approach, which kind of music idea the conductor has, and try to translate in a technical way in order to let the musician do everything possible to match the music ideas of the conductor. I mean, usually the conductors, they speak in a very general, idealistic, abstract way. No,
Mm-hmm.
they want the sound like this, like that, very, very general things. My job is to try to translate in practical things to do to achieve that particular result. No, and then finally we have the concert. In the concert, once more, we are we are all the time supporting the conductor, helping the conductor, try to be the perfect bridge between conductor and the other musicians. But so we already spoke about three three things very, very, very difficult in my job. But there is one more thing which is extra musical, absolutely not the musical things, which is psychological. You are the leader of a group of 100 people, or a little bit more, a little bit less, depends from the repertoire you are playing. But you are the artistic leader, and you need to listen to all the complainings, to understand, to help to some colleagues. You need to know with whom you can speak very directly, with whom you need to speak in another way, in order to bring out all the potential of your colleagues. So this is maybe the most difficult.
So I'm glad I started with that question because now we have another 20 different questions. First of all, the bowing. I never paid attention on the bowing, but I attended a concert which Christian Yarvi conducted, and he's conducted you as well in Sao Paulo. That's how I met him.
Yeah.
Where they played Firebird, but instead of playing down, they played up. Why isn't that like a? This is how it should be played, but it was exactly the opposite. The violins were going up instead of playing down. What's the reason of changing something that has been around for 100 years?
It's a very interesting question because you can change a bow. It's not just something aesthetical. It's not an aesthetic reason.
Right.
It can make difference in the sound, in the attack, in the pronounce of certain chords or notes. Why? Because the bow here in the beginning down, where the hand is on the bow. The bow is much heavier than at the tip. Much heavier. In the Baroque, with the Baroque bow, it's not so big the difference. In the Baroque bow, it's a little bit more equal, the weight. But the weight we have here, it's much more than the weight we have at the tip. So if you want to play some notes with more attack, with more pronunciation, with more diction, like a consonant, not like a vocal, in many cases, a down bow will be better. Will have a better result. On the other hand, if you want a sound who starts from the silence, from nothing, an up bow would help you to do that. But of course, this is a very simple answer. I am trying to simplify, but it's much more complicated.
No, the question goes more because, like, these works, like, for example, Firebird has been played, a million times. Why would you determine, we should change the way the bowing is? Why isn't it standard, like the repertoire? Isn't it?
Because, for example, I don't know which passage exactly you are speaking about, but in any case, it's perfectly possible that a series of notes, for example, pam 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 pam. Let's say that the conductor wants these notes more, even shorter and even lighter, ting 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 ting, a little bit like here, no? So maybe up, it helps to shorter more the notes. So when the conductor asks something like this is part of my job. You need to understand the music reason behind that request and see if it's possible to do, because sometimes it's possible with one musician, but with all the section didn't sound so well. Doesn't sound so well. So every time you need to adapt to the circumstances.
I find it fascinating for several reasons. First, you have to adapt the sound for the orchestra, and some of us can identify a little bit the difference between different orchestras when they play. I mean, especially Osespi, European orchestras, American orchestras, and Osespi has their own sound. And I will reiterate, because I've said it in other interviews, I think it's one of the, maybe top 20 orchestras in the world, and I love attending the concerts there. I hope people will agree with me. But you have to adjust not only the sound for the orchestra, but also for the conductor. Each conductor does things quite differently.
Absolutely.
So you've been the concertmaster with Osespi, obviously with a lot of conductors, but music directors that I can remember, and I'm missing one. But I know John Neschling. Obviously, we saw Sherazade, you playing the solo there with the fantastic Marin Alsop, who is now music director emeritus, and now Terry Fisher, who just took over. How does the orchestra change with a new music director? How much influence? Because, I mean, I met the orchestra with Marin, and she's obviously, she put her soul into the orchestra. She did the same with Baltimore. Such a huge amount of knowledge and sound that she brought to the orchestra. How have you changed over the years and over the music directors?
Oh, it's a very, very nice question and very important question, because the orchestra actually, you just between Neschling and Marin Alsop, we had a few years with Jean-Pascal Tortelier, just to finish all the period when since I am concertmaster there, no, but it's very interesting that you mention Neschling, Marin, and Thierry. Of course, Thierry just started, but because really Neschling and Marin were the two that really worked on the sound of the core of the orchestra, and really were very important. You mentioned this possibility for a conductor to change the sound and to really create an identity of the orchestra, no?
Mhm.
And I think when we with Marin, we had a way of playing. We were younger, first of all. We were younger. We were musicians from 16 different countries together with a lot of enthusiasm, but of course with no sense of what an orchestra is, no, and a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of technical qualities, individual technical qualities. But since Marin arrived, you could see absolutely her incredible work in order to create an identity, a sound core in the orchestra, working on attack of the sound, working on phrasing, working on colors. She insisted many times that, for example, a pianissimo needs to be really a pianissimo. We have a very generous hall. The sound in Sala Sao Paulo, the sound in Sala Sao Paulo, it's very generous. So the tendency of the musician is always to sit comfortably and to enjoy this beautiful sound in Sala Sao Paulo. But if you really are going deeper and deeper and deeper in the music, you see that a pianissimo in Sala Sao Paulo can be really almost nothing. Still like this, in the last row, the people are listening. So you need to explore these possibilities, and Marin did this.
I've sat in the first row and I've sat in the very last row at Sala Sao Paulo, and it's amazing how the sound projects so much. It's definitely one of the most beautiful concert halls in the world. Used to be a train station converted into beautiful. And I remember talking to Marcelo Lopez, and he said, I like to go to every rehearsal to see how high we put the ceiling, because the ceiling above the orchestra is movable. It's really lovely. I want to ask you also, this is between music directors who usually spend between 10 to 14 weeks out of the year with the orchestra, but you play basically 10 months out of the year, and the rest you have such amazing guest conductors.
Oh, yes.
Of the ones that I can remember immediately, obviously Christian Jarvi, Valmer,
Arvo
Volmer,
Vesca.
Osmo, Stefan Deneuve, who you played. If memory serves me right, you played with him Symphonique Fantastique, and you played John
Exactly.
Williams with him, and he had the score annotated, but John Williams. And Giancarlo Guerrero, of course.
Giancarlo
Um,
Guerrero, Natalie Stutzman.
Natalie Valeria Pelleghi. So in a year, you have a lot of conductors. How hard is it for you as a concertmaster adjusting to the sound that every conductor wants, and then, communicating that to 100 musicians?
It used to be difficult. It used to be more difficult when I had less experience. Now I see that with the experience I have now after so many years, I am much faster in understanding what is the approach of the conductor to a certain repertoire, no? And also, this is the first thing. I know better the repertoire because I can say that 80% of the repertoire we play, I already played many times now. And 10 years ago, probably I had 50% of the repertoire. Bigger. I mean, the standard repertoire. No, standard repertoire. Basically, I have everything now. This is the first thing. The second thing is that we like to work with conductor who come back regularly. You say the few names, for example, that at least I think conducted us 6, 7 times. So they are not conductor who are coming 1 week and then for 3 years, bye bye. No, we like to establish certain relationship between between the conductors who are guest conductor, not our music director. So when we see that a conductor match perfectly the orchestra, when we see that the public loves a certain conductor, we try to invite him or her more and more and more. So this is easy because when, for example, Guerrero, Giancarlo, when we have another week with Giancarlo, we all know basically his conducting, his ideas, his approach. So this is nice. It's like meet again an old friend.
He is really fantastic. I remember once Alondra de la Parra was supposed to conduct Osespi, and she was pregnant. She was not allowed to go to Brazil, and Giancarlo conducted and conducted Mexican piece, La Noche de los
Yeah.
Mayas. And
Yes.
Tambuco, which is a percussion group that is from Mexico, and they travel all over the world. They played there. It was a really interesting evening. How does that affect when you're expecting like somebody like Alondra to conduct, and then she can't come, and it happens often that the conductor will
Mm-hmm.
not be there, and obviously you've prepared for them. How does it affect your the rehearsals and the performance?
Well, if we are lucky and the substitute is a friend of us that we know, it's all fine. It doesn't affect at all because we know him or her and we are ready to play under his conducting because we know everything. When the substitution is with someone that the orchestra doesn't know very well, it's a little bit more complicated because, for example, the first rehearsal, it's almost lost. Not lost because, of course, we use the first rehearsal to try to know better the conductor, to understand the conductor. I am not speaking only about gesture. This is the basic things, but what it is, what exists behind the gesture. So, for example, the first rehearsal, you spend the whole rehearsal just to understand this. So you have less time to work on the piece, on the music. No? But as I said, now we as OSESPI, we have a group of friends between conductors who they are not only friend of the orchestra, they are not only very often guest conductors of our season, they are all also very friendly in a situation like this. For example, when our artistic director Nestrovsky called one of those, they are always ready, if they are free, of course, always ready to jump in and to conduct our orchestra. So usually we have always the possibility to work with this group of people who we love.
You are in, and I think I will try not to address just the orchestra, but we'll get into you as well. You're very lucky in that the orchestra has, you know, a fantastic board. The board of directors, you have Marcelo Lopez, who used to play the trumpet in the orchestra, became the executive director, and of course Arthur Nestrovsky, who hopefully he will give us an interview, who's the artistic director of the orchestra, and brings the programming all together. I suppose they do it with the music director and with you, to put everything together. It's really a pleasure of the privilege of having all of these team working together.
Oh, yes.
And having all of these guests that come to Sao Paulo. You know, the one person that I haven't seen conducting OSESPI is actually you. I know that you've conducted when somebody can't show up, and I'm bringing this up because you're also a conductor, and I see that you are also the leader of the OSESPI Quartet, which I suppose you founded, and basically you haven't changed. Three of you. Usually the cello keeps changing around a little bit. But it's
Yes.
it's really a fantastic. But also you conduct in Chile and in Argentina, if I'm not mistaken, and you have your own ensembles in Brazil as well. So I'm going to play one clip which you do not appear on, but when I saw it, I thought this is a very special project. So let's watch this. The Sfera Mundi Orchestra, and I suppose you're the music director there now.
Now,
what-
yes, but I didn't found this orchestra.
But it's such a beautiful project. I suppose they're all Brazilian artists.
Yes, yes.
So how do you divide your time between being music director in Chile, concert master, and now with Sfera Mundi? Really amazing group there.
Well, I am a
And you teach.
very, yeah, also I am curious, still an enthusiast, a little bit work alcoholic too. I still love music like when I was 8 years old, and I was listening recordings, crying for Brahms quintet with piano, for example. I remember that I was dreaming, and I one night I was listening recordings. I said to myself, "Wow, I would pay if I would have money. I would pay to play
To
this
play.
music and to play." And one day I realized that I am the one who is being paid just to do what I love to do. So I am privileged in a way, and I never stopped to love music and to love project creating projects. So, for example, in the OSESP, I had the idea to create this quartet because it's good for the orchestra, it's good for me, it's good for the institution. And then when people started to ask me to conduct, I I saw that everybody was happy. So I started to really study conducting, because I didn't want to just improvise myself as a conductor. So I studied conducting, and then I thought, okay, my first step as a conductor maybe can be a chamber orchestra, not just from nothing to a symphonic orchestra, big orchestra. I was not prepared to that. So I started with my chamber orchestra in Chile, which I still conduct. Actually, I don't conduct, I play with them basically, because it's a small group of musicians. And then this group, which already exists before, Sfera Mundi, wanted, but this group had no music director at that time. They were just friends that they decided to play together. They started with Baroque music, like in the clip, and they wanted to open up a little bit the horizons, and they asked me if I would accept to be their music director. I say yes, absolutely, because my dream was to have a group in Brazil like the group I have in Chile. And so we started. We had so many good projects during this year. Unfortunately, unfortunately for now, we are
We are at home.
at home. But we really have very good projects for when we will be able to be back.
To,
So I am always a little bit looking around, making projects, creating ideas. I love this kind of way to be musician.
I there's there's one thing that always surprised me when I watch you playing as concertmaster or playing with the quartet. You always smile. It's like, you may laugh, but it's a unique trait. Not everybody smiles. Like, the orchestras, they finish and it's all very serious. But at the end of the performances, you're always smiling. It's like it's a joy, and I see it, and that really attracts me. To want to come more to the orchestra, especially when the concertmaster is.
Nice to know, because uh, I actually, that many people told me you need to be a little bit more serious.
Serious.
But yeah, some people told me already, you are a little bit too happy when I am like I
Excessive
am.
happiness.
I cannot change. I was like this since I was very young. So it's my character. I feel privileged anytime I am on stage. Anytime I feel privileged because okay, I made decisions in my life. Also to come to Brazil was a tough decision, big step, and of course it depends also because I made the right decisions, but also I was very lucky.
No, it's fantastic because you get, as an audience member, we get attached to an orchestra, not only because of the sound, but the personalities on stage are so important. And one of the reasons I remember always Giancarlo Guerrero is because of his way of conducting. At Sala Sao Paulo has one advantage that most halls don't have, that you have the row where the choir sits behind the orchestra. So you can actually sit there and watch the conductor face on. And he does these facial
Oh,
expressions when he asks the ARP.
Yes,
He's like really directing you. It's and that gives us, the audience, quite an experience to see it. And that's why I remember who conducts which orchestras, not the music director, but the guests. It happened also with with Stefan Denev when he conducted John Williams. I was at one of the rehearsals, and I remember that he couldn't remember the tempo of Alfred Hitchcock's. It was anyway. I can't remember which work it was, but he asked somebody if they had a phone so he could hear the tempo. It's one of those things that everybody started laughing because they asked us not to bring the telephones into the concert hall. So it was a lot of fun. Emmanuele, one question that I have is, and it must be a very difficult life decision for you when you start playing and you become concertmaster, and now you're conducting and being a music director of different places. You decide not to be a soloist and travel all over the world, a different concert hall every week. How do you take that? How do you make that decision? That this is what you want to do. I don't want to be a soloist.
I sort of. I didn't make really a decision, but it happens because my goal was always to be a musician with a very wide vision in front of me. I would not be happy to be only concertmaster in an orchestra, or to be only a soloist, or to be only quartet player. I love this possibility to change one week to sit with Osespi and play a great symphonic program as a concertmeister, the other week playing with the quartet or together sometimes, the other week also to conduct, and why not another week also to play as a soloist, because sometimes I play also as a soloist, especially in Latin America. This life for me is the life I always dreamt of, and so it was not really a decision, but in a way I always walk in this direction, and to try to be as wide as possible in my music life.
It's really amazing. We're over 45 minutes now, and I feel that we're just getting started. It's such a pleasure, and I really want to explore other questions, but we will run out of time. I want to invite you back in a few months when you're back in Sao Paulo.
With pleasure. It's a pleasure to speak with about these arguments with you, and I am very happy to be back.
Thank you. the great Emmanuele Baldini, concertmaster of OSESPI. Thank you very much for joining us. We have to talk so much about music, about your career, how it was like to be a little kid in Italy before moving to Brazil. But we will leave that for another time. It's always great to be able to have another episode with you. It leaves us more expectations. I want to thank you not only for joining me, but for bringing really a lot of happiness and light to my life. I know you do it for a lot of people there, but I remember always very gladly my time when I lived in Brazil, going every single week to see you there. Some spectacular performances like we've been talking about today. One particular one that comes to mind is Candide, which you did with Marin Alsop. A beautiful performance there. Of course, the ninth, Paulo Zott singing. I don't think you get this from your audience, that actually we go to you and tell you thank you because you bring really so much light to our lives. I want to thank you for that, and thank that to the orchestra and everybody involved.
I am really grateful because it's not common that some people from the orchestra tells to you these kind of words. So are always very, very welcome, and I feel happy to do this and to help the people to be happy.
Thank you. Stand by, don't go away. I just want to tell our friends who are watching us either live or on demand, next week we have a jam-packed week. Of course, July 1st, Canada Day, we will have a great surprise for everybody, and to all the Canadians, happy Canada Day. On July 2nd, we will have our first non-musical guest, which is going to be very strange for me, but I'm going to welcome Stephen Hecht. Stephen is the founder of A Million Peacemakers and the author of this book that you can see there, Nonflict. I'm so happy that he's going to be able to join us, especially in this period in history. And again, I want to really thank Emmanuele Baldini for taking the time this morning to be with us. Thank you very much. Say hello to all our friends there in Sao Paulo as soon as you get back. I hope that the orchestra will get together very soon and start playing again.
I hope to. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you again. We will see you all very soon on another MusiCafe. Stay tuned. Thank you.